So welcome everyone to this event to commemorate the International Day of the Girl. We have participants from 49 countries around all continents with us today. So it's really a truly global and a virtual event. My name is Anne-Sophie Lois. I am the UN representative and head of office of Plan International in Geneva. And I am also a member of the Global Board for International Gender Champions. We are organizing this event today with many partners. So we are with IPU, OHHR, UNFPA, UNICEF, UN Women, WHO, International Gender Champion, Child Rights Connect, Defense for Children International, Save the Children, Terre des Hommes, the Permanent Mission of Mexico, and the Permanent Mission of the Netherlands. The themes for today's event is centering girls' voices in the international system. There has been momentum building in recent years where children and young people, and especially girls and young women, have been seizing increasingly more opportunity to make their voices heard. We all have heard about Malala, about Greta Thunberg, but there are countless more girls across the world fighting violence, child marriage, and asking for a different world. COVID-19 has presented significant challenges for girls, of course, with long-term impact on their lives. But it has also presented us with opportunities to redefine not only a new normal in the way we protect and promote the rights of girls, but also in the way that we support and work with girls and young women. We had to be more creative and think of ways to include as many people as possible. For example, Plan, together with other partners, have been able to organize virtual dialogues with hundreds of girls in the context of the review of Beijing Platform for Action. So today, our overarching question that we would like to address in this event is the following. How do we ensure that promising modifications to our way of working and thinking are sustained in the post-COVID-19 era? And that the international system is inclusive, fit for purpose, and remains relevant for next generation by putting girls' voices and their rights at the center of decision-making processes. So that's the overarching theme for this intergenerational dialogue. We have with us an exciting group of girls and young women and high-level leaders in the international system. I will let the girls introduce themselves a bit further, a little bit later. But with us, we do have Rea, 70 years old from Kosovo, member of Child Rights Connect's Children's Advisory Team, and an activist for children's rights and gender issues in Kosovo. And then we have Angelica, 22 years old. She is from Australia, one of the youth leaders supported by Plan International Australia and a co-author of the girl-led report, A Better Normal, on girls' vision for a new world in the post-COVID-19 era. And I would like to add a special thanks to you, Angelica, who is connecting very late in Sydney today. Lubinda, 15 years old, she's from Zambia. She is a member of Children's News Agency in Zambia, and active in speaking out on children's rights in various media outlets. We also have the honor of welcoming today's leaders, known for their commitment to gender equality. I will only briefly do a brief introduction to keep time for the dialogue. Michelle Bachelet, the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights and a former president of Chile. Ms. Bachelet is also part of the International Gender Champion Network, so welcome. Then we have Jane Kita. She's the Deputy Executive Director for Programs of UNFPA since June 2020, after many years as a representative for UNFPA in Mauritania, Benin, DRC, and Nigeria. She also served as the Minister of Cooperation and Africa Integration for Guinea from 2018 to 2020. I would like to add a special thanks to you, Ms. Kita, who has also connected now very early because you are based in New York. And we know that you unfortunately need to leave a little bit before the end of the session. but we are lucky to have Monica Ferro coming in. She is the director of the UNFPA's Geneva office, and she is also part of the International Gender Champion Network. And then we have Martin Shungong. He is the Secretary General of IPU, the Interparliamentarian Union, since 2014. And before joining IPU, he worked for 14 years within the Cameroon Parliament. He is also the Global Board Chair of the International Gender Champion Network. After this little brief introduction, I just would like to say a few words on the format. It's a bit different format than our traditional panels. First, we are online and we are not meeting face to face. And also here, we want to create a space for girls and young women and the high-level leaders of the international system to ask each other questions, and particularly those questions they have never had the opportunity to ask before. So we will have the dialogue, that's the center of our event today, and after it, we will have it in question and answer session. On this, we would like to ask all participants, and warm welcome to all of you that are connecting from so many places in the world, that in the Q&A box, you can write down your question at any time, and we will have a look at them and select a few of them for the Q&A session. But before we start, let us just show you a very short and brief video, which is an intervention from Director General of the World Health Organization, Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, who couldn't be with us today in person, but he wanted to share some remarks about WHO's commitment to youth engagement. So now over to the film.
Is the International Day of the Girl, a day to celebrate the importance, power, and potential of girls around the world. Girls like Malala, Greta, Payal, Zulayaka, and Sophie have inspired millions with their courage to demand action. Today is the International Day of the Girl, a day to celebrate the importance, power, and potential of girls around the world. Girls like Malala, Greta, Payal, Zulayaka, and Sophie have inspired millions with their courage to demand action on some of the world's most pressing issues. For each girl featured in the international news, we know there are countless others striving every day to improve their lives and futures and those of their communities. The health and well-being of girls is a priority for WHO. While much progress has been made in the last 2 decades, there is much still to do. For example, 12 million girls are married before age 18 each year. 1 in 5 girls globally has experienced sexual violence. In Eastern and Southern Africa, nearly 80% of new HIV infections among adolescents are among girls. We have to come together to improve the lives and health of girls. But girls themselves must be at the center of that effort. Girls are change makers, not only for their own health, but for the health of their families, communities, and societies. That's why WHO is working with other United Nations organizations and with civil society to advocate for gender equality and for meaningful youth engagement. Likewise, I'm happy to say that we will soon be launching a youth council to engage with the leadership of WHO on global health issues. WHO recognized that COVID-19 represents a huge challenge for adolescents and young people, and especially for girls and young women. We also recognize that young people need to be a key part of the solution, and that the best advocates for girls are girls themselves. Let's work together across generations with and for today's girls to raise their voices and to help them realize their potential. No decision for girls should be made without them. I thank you.
Also, we thank very much the Director General from WHO for these really important remarks and putting the girls in the center. So by this, I would like now to give the floor to Rhea, Angelica, and Luvinda, who will deliver their opening remarks. Rhea, you have the floor now. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to everyone. My name is Rhea. I am 17 and I am from Kosovo. I hope everyone watching and listening right now is safe and healthy. This opportunity gave young girls like me a screen to centralize girls' rights, to transform gender norms and power relations, improve our value and position in society, and advance gender equality. During these days, I was able to rely on a great help from our friends and colleagues at Child's Rights Connect, Plan International Geneva, and Save the Children in Geneva and Kosovo. Thank you for assisting us on this path. Thank you for making sure we feel safe and comfortable during this huge event. Today, we're gathered here to address important subjects. Today, we're unlocking the potential of girls and young women in all eras of life, but in particular, their power to speak out and have their voices heard. Today, we're not being spoken for, we're speaking for ourselves. Why is it important to involve girls in decision-making processes? When you have open doors to different perspectives, when you have open doors to clearer opinions, valid reasons, why would you question the importance of girls in decision-making processes? I think that is the question why that should be modified to yes. It is important that girls should be involved in these processes and that their opinion should be heard. The participation in the decision-making processes is your right, and this right should be respected and not questioned. It should never be optional. The support provided during the pandemic rarely involved children. Children's involvement is not distributed. Children's involvement is also not a norm. Children's needs were not taken into account when this whole action and support was actually planned. Children's rights are not seen as a priority, and participation in decision-making will actually change this. Children's views and perspectives can shape the support needed, especially for the most marginalized ones. Today, I'm here on the behalf of the girls that couldn't be here, but we should question the reason why they're not. Is it poverty? Is it discrimination? Or is it also the fact that the girl from Kosovo has fewer opportunities to get the education they deserve or even to travel outside of Kosovo? Is it also due to the fact that their role in their family is still very traditional and that the social norms need to change, and also the fact that their rights should be strongly protected and implemented by law? Is it also the fact that they get married at a very early age and that they're seen as a carer of the family, or that they're valued less than a boy? When women account for approximately half of the population, they have the right to be represented as such. When the interests of women and men are totally different, women are needed in representative institutions to articulate their interests of women by women and not by men. We should start seeing strong and independent women in the construction of our collective daily life. By bringing more women into decision-making positions, we would enable countries to use all the resources at its disposal and help ensure everybody, regardless of their gender or their age or where they're from, is able to help shape society. I will always stand by the fact that we must try every day to give girls the belief, support, and tools to thrive, because what girls can do and achieve can be truly limitless. Thank you very much. And right now, I would like to yield the floor to my friend and colleague, Angelica.
Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land from which I'm speaking to you guys all today, the land of the Wadamadigal peoples of the Darug Nation. I am a 22-year-old Nigerian-Australian youth advocate, graduate of the Macquarie University Global Leadership Program and current Masters of Research student. I myself have been passionate all my life about youth participation in policy decision-making and gender justice, and I've been fortunate enough to participate in several different youth leadership opportunities, such as being a youth activist for Plan International Australia, and also the Director of Youth Leadership with African Women Women Australia, an organisation that raises the voices and profile of African women in Australia. Being engaged in opportunities like this, such as community-led research and leadership councils, has given me the opportunity to have a legitimate space in my own community and the broader Australia. I'm able to contribute ideas that ensure more effective responses and service for young women with intersectional identities like mine. Youth participation like this amazing event that we have today has allowed me to be seen as an equal, with a voice that's just as valued in the actualization of solutions for gender equality. But the pre-COVID-19 world has definitely failed girls and young women in all of our diversities. It has failed to protect us, it's failed to listen to us, and it's failed to empower us. The pandemic has also exposed deepened and significant cracks in our system, institutions, and leadership. For example, the pandemic is likely to cause a 1/3 reduction in the progress to ending gender-based violence by 2030. As the world rebuilds in the wake of this crisis, we don't want to simply return to the normal. We want to go forwards to a better future, one that's more inclusive and empowering for everyone. For this to happen, we know that children and young people need to be involved in decision-making processes at all levels. Because when this doesn't happen, our experiences and voices aren't reflected in policy and legislation and the pragmatic responses, and our ideas and solutions are not tapped into. As such, if the COVID-19 pandemic is a chance for this world to be co-created in an inclusive and transformational way, then we want the response to be just and sustainable, and to center marginalized voices in decision-making in order to ensure this. And in order to ensure this, it is important that voices, experiences, and opinions of girls and young women like myself, Ria, and Labinda, and other girls and young women around the world in all our diversities are amplified and heard. This includes taking an intersectional lens to ensure girls and young women of diverse socioeconomic status, race, ethnicity, sexuality, gender identity, ability, and other marginalizing factors are heard. After all, it is our future that's being created. Our passions drive us and allow us to imagine a better world, and we demand a seat at the table to co-create it. We believe it's crucial that a youth, gender transformative, and broader equity lens is applied to the new normal, allowing for radical and universal change regarding the rights and equality of young women and girls and gender diverse folk in order to create a better normal. We often hear from decision makers that it is difficult to consult with everyone, or that young people don't care or don't come to consultations when they are invited. But we know from when we as youth leaders facilitate consultations, even like today, that young people always step up to the mark. And so we must ask, why is there such disparity? Decision makers need to consider how to make their engagement processes more inclusive and engaging from the beginning. We can become so used to being ignored that when we see things advertised, especially at higher levels, we might not think it's really for us. But I was given the chance this year to be able to be part of a youth-led action research by Plan International. We got to co-design the research inquiry, the methodology, and a great platform for youth by youth, which saw girls and young women from 99 countries around the world contribute their ideas to a better normal. In conclusion, decision makers must institutionalize participatory processes for girls and young women in all our diversities at different levels, local, regional, and national, so that our experiences are accurately represented and solutions designed for us are co-designed by us. These processes must have clear, meaningful mandates and adequate resources. They must be accessible to and inclusive of all children without discrimination, ensuring that girls and young women are able to participate on an equal basis. So I'd now like to pass over to my fellow girl advocate, Labinda.
Okay,
You
thank you.
can go ahead.
All right, thank you so much. Good afternoon to everyone. My name is Mondia Luinda from Zambia, and I'm very thankful for this opportunity because I'm grateful to be here because I'm very passionate about child rights, and I'm also glad I can be able to speak on behalf of every other girl child out there. So, addressing the question that says, why is it important to include children in decision-making processes? Well, it is important to involve children in decision-making processes because we are capable of influencing some of the issues that affect us as children and offer a different perspective from adults. In the context of COVID-19, involving us in decision-making processes will enable us to express ourselves better and give a better view of issues and matters that circulate around us. Therefore, adults will be able to understand and better reflect our needs. And this has been impossible though, due to some barriers which include lack of information. Lack of information simply means that only a few children know about their rights because they lack information. Some children are ignorant, they do not want to participate because they simply do not know about their rights. They do not know that they're capable of making their own decisions. They do not know that they're capable of participating in decision-making processes. Another one is lack of support from parents due to some cultural norms. Basically, culture includes what people actually do and what they believe in. Culture greatly influences how we see the world. Therefore, in some parts of Africa, you will find that girls are not allowed to participate in decision-making processes, but only boys. And this has mightily affected our participation. Language barrier also has really hindered child participation because let's take for instance a typical Zambian child living in a rural area. Once you take a CRC document for them to know about their rights, they will not be able to read it because it's maybe the English is too complex, maybe the language use is too technical. So simply because they're not able to read or to write or to understand the language. So I think also language barrier has played a very great role in hindering child participation. In conclusion, we as children often feel intimidated by adults because we're often looked down upon and because adults do not believe that we're capable of making our own decisions and taking up lead in society. And this has really affected our participation. But this shouldn't be the case because children are capable of making their own decisions and participating in decision making processes because we can be able to reflect better what we're going through and for adults to understand better what we are going through so that they can better reflect our needs. So we want to have more platforms and opportunities where we can express ourselves freely and highly participate in decision making processes. Because once we take lead as children, as we are leaders of today and future leaders of tomorrow, if we take part in decision making processes today, then it means that our future is secured. So we really want to participate more and make our own decision in these high level decision making processes in order to better ourselves and feel connected to our community and feel connected to our leaders and freely participate and highly make our own decisions in these decision making processes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rhea, Angelica, and Lubinda for those passionate remarks. I think everybody listening can be convinced that we actually can learn so much from children and young people. It's a lot of knowledge, passion, and experience in what you are saying, and I think it gives us a lot of food for thoughts. You know, talking about unlocking potential, need to be able to speak up for themselves, not wanting to return to an old normal, but looking at a just sustainable way to participate, to be able to be a co-creator is really important. Children are capable. That was very clear words coming forward. Many good ideas we learned and heard from you today. I think this is an excellent start of our session today, and I would now like to kick off our intergenerational dialogue, which is this opportunity for girls and the high-level leaders to exchange, ask each other questions, and learn from each other. In total, we have 6 questions. And now I would like to hand over the floor to Rhea, who will start with the first question. So please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Meaningful participation requires that girls and young women have access to quality and inclusive education and training resources within formal education environments and within the community that will allow them to participate more in society. We know that young people are often criticized for their lack of engagement, but I believe we have failed for a long time to seek out their participation in democratic and civic activities. So my question towards the Deputy Executive Director, Dan Keita, is how can UN agencies and other power holders in the international system support young people to build the skills they need? And how can young people themselves be involved in the development of these resources? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rhea, for this such important question. And I hope I will live up to your standards. I said a few days back that we are learning from young people, and I truly believe that. Education has a transformative role in teaching and nurturing all the value that are dear to our hearts: peace, human rights, gender equality, mutual respect, tolerance, connectiveness, and global citizenship. And you are really demonstrating that now today. Education is important because it allows you to have to exercise your right and get choices. What is the most important thing in life is to get to have choices. And you today have this floor on the International Girl Day is important because other young people, other young girls are watching. The girls are watching, but the young men are watching too, because you need to grow up together. So I think what we do at UNFPA is to ensure young girls' participation, capacity building, resource available to you, and services. You know, we have service for sexual reproductive health and right. Every right, you know, is important. Human security is absolutely essential. But there is one right that is so essential is your intimate right. What you do with yourself, what you do with your body. Your right not to be married at 15-year-old and to stay longer in school. That is so important from where we sit, from where we come from. So from Bolivia to Nepal, from Nepal to South Africa, from South Africa to Conakry or to Addis Ababa, we strive to give those tools to young girls for them to be able to work and to be able to get the knowledge they need to know about themselves in order to be able to fulfill their full potential. But education is not only one side. You can educate as well. All of you young girl of today, you can educate your parents. I'm a mother of a not so young boy anymore, but he has taught me so much, so much, so much that I think I'm a better mom today and trying really to live up to that standards and to try to give to the rest of the young girl just like you that opportunity. So strive for yourself. Make sure you know the formal education, but take advantage of all the education opportunity you can give, you can receive around the world. I thank you so very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your remarks. Now, please, Michelle Bachelet, you could come in for your brief reflections.
Well, I mean, of course, I agree on everything that Diane has mentioned. And as education as a transformating and empowering role, not only in building life skills, but also in promoting human rights values and all kinds of values. And we all know, of course, that how important it is as a pathway to gender equality and to empowerment of women and girls. I used to be, when I was the Executive Director of UN Women, I used to say education, and because I'm a medical doctor, is sort of a vaccine for child marriage, HIV, etc., because children at school educating themselves will make better choices. In the context of COVID-19, we have to also deal with what it's called the digital divide. Digital divide in terms of the capacity of connectivity online, but also because in the digital divide, there is a gender divide. And many times girls have less access to digital opportunities than boys. But while recognizing the critical role of education and the many obstacles that girls have to access to education, I want to challenge something. I want to challenge the narrative that girls' lack of participation at all levels are due to their lack of education or skills. Because in the 70s, women were told that they needed to build skills to participate in political life. 50 years later, in many countries, Women are more educated than men, but still we have only 25% of parliamentarians. So what I mean to say, we have very well educated and well capable women. And I have to say, and concluding with this, that the main obstacles in the path to education are the same that you will find in the path to participation. Gender stereotypes, discriminatory legislation and violence, and only to mention a few. Women are often made to feel insecure when they venture into territories traditionally dominated by male, such as participation in public life. What shows research? Research shows that women tend to apply for jobs only when they fill all the requirements, while men tend to apply even when they have only some. So it is, I would say, inbuilt higher standards to which women are held, but many times we hold ourselves as well to them, is that we need to work to dismantle this thing, including within and through the education system, and help women to tell, yes, we can, we have the capacity, we can participate, and we can do much more. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Michelle Bachelet. Now over to you for your remarks, Martin Shugongo.
Thank you very much, Anne-Sophie. Let me congratulate the young ladies there for a wonderful introduction there, and happy International Day of the Girl. Let me use this opportunity to make a few points. One is that we should not forget that education is very much part of the globally negotiated and concluded roadmap, the SDGs. Secondly, education is not a favor. Education is a right for every human being. That is important. So what we are doing is we are not negotiating that. We are simply looking at how this can be effectively exercised for the benefit of young people and young girls in particular. And the problem there is we need to address why international commitments are not sufficiently being translated into national realities. That is where it is important to engage with parliaments. We have been talking about inclusiveness here, and I think that inclusiveness can come through institutions that are supposed to mirror society, and that is parliament. And parliament has to use those powers that they have. They don't negotiate those powers. Lawmaking, oversight, budget allocation, let them use it to ensure inclusive and quality access to education for young people. And if we want to empower girls really, we should also be placing more focus on STEM education, that is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. This is important going forward. So I think that the inclusive potential of parliaments can help bring about broader access to education. And I was very heartened to hear the comments made by one of the young ladies that you cannot make decisions without us. This is crucial. You know where the shoe pinches. I think the person who wears the shoe knows where it pinches. And it is you who can best articulate your concerns. And this needs to be taken into account when formulating policies, when allocating budgetary resources for access to education. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now I think you can ask your questions that you have to the girls.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
I do know that from their introduction, they're just great. They're going to do a fantastic job answering my question. And I want to address you, Angelica, all the way in Australia. In recent years, we have been hearing a lot about the democratic deficit in national and global governance. I think many of you did mention that in your statements. When the voices of ordinary people are not heard and acted upon adequately, especially in the international systems, and I stand accused. From your perspective, what role can young women and adolescent girls play in making democracies more representative? How do you envisage the role of national parliaments? I think I spilled the beans a moment ago in promoting the participation of young women and girls. In particular, what do you think it would take for you to be able to take part in the political life of your country, which I imagine is Australia? Angelica, please.
Thank you so much, Martin, for your question. So girls and young women, we are really well placed to address the social challenges that impact our lives, demonstrated by the widespread global mobilization and youth activism today. Supporting young girls and women's full participation in economic, social, and political life is definitely a key factor in reducing poverty that we experience, increasing the well-being of our lives, and also just creating fair, safe, and secure communities that meet the needs of girls and young women. And this was definitely supported in our report, A Better Normal, Girls Call for a Revolutionary Reset by Plan International, where 94% of girls supported globally a vision for greater inclusion and equality of power, where disadvantaged groups such as us are included in political decision making. Given this global support in our report, I believe that organizations like the United Nations and governments and community structures do actually need a systemic rehaul in their approaches to youth participation and should be more youth and gender responsive. We have a plethora of lived experiences to offer, and national parliaments definitely play a key role in institutionalizing participatory processes for girls and young women. I think national parliaments should support us to be able to report at national, regional, and global levels on key human rights and sustainable goal developments and mechanisms. And by that, I really mean engaging a large number of us, not just a repeat few. These opportunities should also be transparent and also non-tokenistic in nature, and allow us to give feedback to monitor the quality of policies that are implemented for us. I definitely would say, though, that it goes without saying that for girls and young women, we are more vulnerable to harassment when we do engage in democratic processes and opportunities. And I can attest to this from my own personal experiences in advocacy. I think political participation needs to be more enabling and embrace a fear-free environment for us and for people like me to participate, free of sexism and political violence, because this stops a lot of us from wanting to engage in the politics of our nations, engage in democratic processes. So I believe that meaningful democracy equates to meaningful youth participation. It has to not obstruct our collective action of activists around the world, and it involves a genuine investment in adopting the attainable solutions that we develop. I think these ideas and mechanisms will ensure that the cycle of leadership and democratic participation is genuine and includes minorities and youth and our expertise in our own right.
Thank you so much, Angelica. I think now some brief reflection from Luvinda.
Okay, so in my own point of view, for us as children to participate in the political way of our country, I think it's because it will take interest. Firstly, it will take interest, and then it will take us being acknowledged and also equipped with the knowledge about it. Because you can't just tell a child to participate in political affairs when they do not know about it. So it's a big process. So I feel equipping us with the knowledge, information about it will enable us to participate freely in our political way of life. Well, in my own opinion, I feel I am able to participate in my political affairs because I know that I have the best interest as a child to put in consideration. And in order for me to see changes and my best interest being put into consideration, I must take lead and participate in political affairs. But this has well been not possible because the processes are too big for us as children. We might look at them as impossible, but if we take the lead and put interest in it, I think we can be able to participate in these political affairs. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your remarks there. And I think you have also a question that you would like to pose.
Well, yes. So now I'll pose a question to the High Commissioner, Michelle Bachelet. And the question is, how are you making sure that government and community structures are both youth and gender responsive and addressing the areas that young people would like to see the United Nations and other organizations focus on? Lastly, how do you make sure that decision-making processes are more child-friendly?
Well, thank you, Rubinda, for that question. As all of you mentioned in your initial remarks, participation is essential, and you have to be in the place where decisions are made. Because if we see the challenges today, it's not only about for the present generation, it's for the future generations. So we need, on one hand, the young girls and young generation involved, but we also need to participate. And I do believe, as you say, that participation is a right and not a privilege. And young women and young people have a right to influence the decisions that affect their lives. And governments and governance structures must ensure that young people and young women are at the table. Is that happening today? Not yet. In some places, they open it. In some places, they open it one time for one particular issue, but it's not yet in the culture of government. So I think not only us, a lot of other of our agency colleagues are working on the same. And us, as an office, we're working for young people guided by the UN Youth Strategy, which sets engagement, participation, and advocacy as a priority in order to amplify youth voices for the promotion and on a just and sustainable world. 2 years ago, in 2018, my office developed guidelines on the effective implementation of the right of participation in public affairs, and that guidance, it's done for member states, for government, so they can take a lot of good ideas and good practices and make it a reality. We're now supporting a number of countries in implementing such guidelines with a specific focus on youth and women, and look forward to extending our support to other interest states. Hope it works, because we're trying to do our best on that. We also have deployed youth officers across several of our offices in the field to work directly with youth-led or youth-focused organizations. For example, in our regional office in the Middle East and North Africa in Beirut, youth officer organized events for International Youth Day last year, and more than 100 students participated, but the discussion was how we can really participate actively and effectively in government processes. So this type of activities can help and impact youth advocacy and participation in and with government. So we're committed to ensuring more on that and to put more attention on girls' voices in those efforts. We believe it's critical to change public perception and stereotype about the role of girls and women in society. One way of doing that is by making visible the role women and girls are playing in communities. But let me give you one personal example. When I was a child, my mother told me, if you want to get married, you got to get married, but that's not your role in life. You study, learn your skills, and you do whatever you want. And I became Minister of Health first and Minister of Defense. And when I became Minister of Defense for the first time, people started looking at women differently. Oh, women can deal with these difficult issues. So that's the way if we can also have role models, women that can also work with girls, mentoring them, helping them, because there are women as powerful as you, but some others feel insecure, as you said, intimidated by others. So we need to see and show how women, the role they're playing in their communities, as professional, as peace builder, as first respondent, as human rights defenders. So we have made several efforts on that, from campaign, showing the impressive work and achievement of women and girls human rights defenders, to collaboration with Wikipedia, for example, to ensure that such work is also narrated online. And I cannot overstate the critical importance of this, because it provides also role models to young girls. There remains a real need to expand on the extent of the depth of youth participation. The reality on the ground is that, as I said before, many understand like on one-off event, while it should be a collaborative process in all stages. The UN itself must walk the talk. We need to do better as well. My office has been promoting and implementing child participation in various ways for a number of years. We recently finalized guidelines on engaging with human rights defenders for our field colleagues, and also, as Sophia has mentioned, we are also part of the global leaders of the Action Coalition on Feminist Movement and Women Leadership, and we're also committed to working with young feminists. But we want to engage you with us. We want to engage you with OHCHR and the UN to help us devise programs and plans that address your concerns, and when necessary, that protects you as well from existing threats. Because I think Angelica was mentioning how hard it was to be women in politics. I know women parliamentarians are also harassed, and of course, girls will be harassed and can be attacked. So we want to support you in your role as activists, as defenders, and I look forward to hearing you how we can get better at this, because the challenges that we're facing are rooted in inequality and are threatening future generations. Any sustainable and just response must be devised with young people, as everybody has agreed, and must have at the heart the promotion of justice and equality. I'll never forget when we were discussing about gender equality and women's empowerment, a young woman said, I don't want you to invite me to sit at the table. I want you to invite me to design the shape of the table. And I think that what it means is, as I think Martin said it, nothing for us without us. So it's nothing for you without you. Thank you very much, Jacinta.
Thank you very, very much, the High Commissioner Bachelet. I think there are possibility now for Secretary General Marty Chouvin to make some remarks.
Thank you very much. I need to say that I'm very pleased to be sharing this platform with a number of distinguished colleagues, Michelle and yourself, Anne-Sophie. We all belong to the International Gender Champions, which is a network of senior leaders who are committed to transforming their entities into more gender-sensitive institutions. And I'm very pleased to be chairing the global board of that International Gender Champions. And if I may go to the IPU and try to say how we are trying to walk the talk, the first thing is we need foundational instruments. In the IPU, those foundational instruments for empowering girls and young girls in particular are the Universal Declaration on Democracy in 1997, the 2010 Resolution on Youth Participation. Both lay emphasis on access to decision-making for women and for young people in particular. And this need is informed by reality. When we look at what is happening today, we see that the world population is made up, half of the world's population is under 30 years. But when you look at representation in parliament, they account for just 2.2% in parliament. So there is a problem of underrepresentation. And this has to be corrected. For the IPU, it's a question of advocacy. It's a question of collecting data, doing analysis and making this analysis available widely so that we can inform decision-making processes. It's also helping parliaments to be gender sensitive, to pay attention to the needs of young people and young women in particular. In the IPU, we have a strong movement now for women and for young people. We have a forum of women parliamentarians, a forum of young parliamentarians who are informing decision-making processes within the organization, making these processes more youth-friendly, more women-friendly. I think that this is something that we can be proud of, that we can share with our colleagues in the other institutions. So you need foundational policy instruments, and then you need to follow up with concrete action and create institutions that nurture this implementation of the instruments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Concrete action is indeed very much needed. So now maybe some brief remark from you again, Kita.
Thank you so much. It's so inspiring. This meeting is so much more important than the one I'm going to attend, much more boring.
You are welcome to stay with us.
I still need to commute. I think participation, Madam Michelle said it all. There is nothing to add to that. Just, I think participation, let me take the advantage of the UN reform that we all work together to mention something that we do together actually. Let's take first our principal, Michelle's shop. She does something every year. We call it the Universal Periodic Review. In that is a fantastic tool for countries, to review their human rights based approach on everything. Why I'm talking about it? Because I was minister not long ago. and we had to work on everything. I harassed the Minister of Justice, the Minister of Human Rights, because we're not doing right. I was in their back, literally, before they go to Geneva last January. And the final report, they send it to me. Okay, you're not among us anymore, but this is important. That's what they do that. And then we can look in every country. The government needs to look into it to see what is good or not. Take another agency, UNICEF. They have this youth parliament around the world. They are fantastic. They are fantastic. I invite them all the time. And there as well, you can learn and you can participate. The big parliament, like Mr. Martin, those, you just ask them to speak for a 12-year-old so you can understand all the big words. That's always I said, please speak to me in a language I can understand. Even though I'm no medical doctor and I work for UNFPA. So sometimes they're big words, I have no clue what they're talking about. And yet I'm a PhD in law. It's not because you're well educated and you know everything. So be no shy when you participate and learn. And I had a privilege in my government to select young people to work with me. I walked the talk when I went back. I selected from 22-year-old to 28 young people who are today civil servant in the government because I left there, you know. So we need to give them the chance to participate. And when you do, don't hesitate to teach your bosses. We all can learn from you. That's what I wanted to tell you because you are not today, tomorrow leader, you are today's leader. And the new normal you want should be a decent, normal, human right-based approach. And that's what UNFPA prone everywhere through Minister of Youth, for Minister of Gender, because everyone counts and are accounted for. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we have a question now also. So I don't know if it will be you, Jen, or if it will be Monica. Do you still have some time to pose the question? Or should Monica go ahead here?
I think Monica should go ahead.
Okay.
And please accept my apologies to be leaving now.
Of course, thank you so much for your participation. So over to you, Monica.
Thank you, Anne-Sophie. And let me start by saying, see you later to my amazing boss, Diane. And then now saying hello to the High Commissioner and to the Secretary General, and say how delighted I am to be with you in this panel. And of course, I saved the best for last, our amazing youth speakers. You are really inspiring, and I think that we really have a lot to learn from you, because as Diane was saying, you are not the leaders of tomorrow, you are the leaders of today. And I remember when I was young, and I also was young one day, I remember that when I used to hear young people are the future, it kind of made me upset because I wanted the present, I didn't want the future. So kudos to all of you, you really make us all proud. And I think that because Diane ended by mentioning that for us, UNFPA, everyone counts, it's in our tagline. I think that we should also consider a large part of the world population today, the adolescents, girls, and they really represent more than 500 million of them around the world. And of course, logically, it follows that they are quite a diverse group. So girls' lives, their well-being, they are impacted by their social background, their race, their civil status, whether they are early married or not, their ability status, their ethnic and linguistic identity, among many other factors, as Lubinda already mentioned in the beginning. And of course, depending on who they are, where they are from, and what they are experiencing, their needs are also very different. And of course, their opportunities are also very distinct. And this is what I wanted to ask Lubinda. Lubinda, you've already told us that not all girls face the same issues, and some of them face additional cross-cutting or intersecting issues, such as those based on race, sexual orientation, gender identity, disability, or other factors. So can you please share with us, how can we ensure that all girls' voices are heard and represented? Over to you, Lubinda.
Thank you so much. Well, in order for you to get a diverse range of voices to be heard, I feel we have to tackle the issue of barriers. Firstly, it all starts with the barriers, because if we do have barriers, meaning we won't have any child represented. So if we work on the barriers, if we tackle them and make sure that they're handled, then we will have a diverse range of voices being heard. Secondly, like I mentioned earlier, we have to be equipped with the knowledge, because without information, we will not be able to participate. So if we're equipped with the information, adequate information for us to participate in these decision-making processes, then I believe every child, every girl child out there will be able to participate. And then when we all come together to talk about issues that are affecting us as children, for example, at the national symposiums, when celebrating the CRC, I feel if every child can be given the chance to express themselves and talk about issues that are affecting them, then we can have a wide range of voices being represented. Rather than having four people to talk about issues that are affecting them and covering for every other child, I feel if every other child, it should be mandatory for every child to participate and express themselves and talk about issues that are affecting them individually, personally, emotionally, and physically. If they can be able to talk about issues that are affecting them in those areas, then I believe we can have information. I believe we can have a diverse range of voices being represented. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Luinda, for all those very important points around barriers. I would like to give over now the floor to Angelica for some brief reflection on this point.
Thank you. I think Labinda put it really perfectly as to how we can actually engage and ensure that all girls with diverse experiences and diverse identities are represented. I think just the one thing I wanted to add to this is that from my own personal experience when I was, although I am still young, when I was younger in primary school, I used to think about the UN and see the UN as something that was so far away that I couldn't reach to. And that's a feeling that a lot of young people, young girls and women feel, that the UN is so far away. How do we actually reach there? How do we actually engage with leaders there? And especially when you're part of community groups, how is the UN engaged with on the ground with the grassroots, at the grassroots level, with community groups that represent each of our different identities? And I think that's something that just needs to be made clear in the mechanisms for engaging intersectional groups. It's that we need to consider the fact that for different people, the UN can look more far-reaching than others. I myself consider myself as someone who is privileged in many ways, and I know that other groups that my identity doesn't fall into, they are at a greater disadvantage of being involved in processes and decision making. So I think that's something that the UN just needs to consider.
Thank you so much. And do you have a question that you would like to pose also, Angelica?
I do indeed. So I just wanted to ask this question to all leaders, but in particular Monica. So it's focused on just looking at intersectionality and diversity, as we're just talking about. So how do you, as decision makers, plan to institutionalize intersectional participatory processes for girls and young women in all their diversities at all levels? And whether that's local, regional, and national, so that their experiences are accurately represented and solutions are co-designed for us by us. How can you make opportunities for decision-making and engagement in community and government domains more accessible to a diverse range of girls and young women, especially those who have been historically isolated from opportunities? Example, girls who have experienced gender-based violence and girls from rural communities. I'd actually like to ask Martin if you'd be able to answer the question first and then open it up to the rest of the leaders.
Thank you very much, Angelica. I agree with you that the UN should not seem so far away. The UN should be closer to us. And I would like to preface my answer with one remark, and that is the potential that young people have to effect change. And we can see this in recent events, such as the Me Too movement. We look at what happened during the Arab Spring. A lot of it was driven by young people. And we think that these two movements brought about some positive change. So if there were any doubt that young people can make change, I think these two movements evidence that no, this is not true. They can make change. So what is important, I think I mentioned in my previous intervention, is to correct the underrepresentation of young people in positions of decision making, especially in parliament. So empowerment, political empowerment is important, and young people cannot be too young to participate in decision making processes. That is why at the IPU, we strongly support the not too young to run movement. If you are old enough to vote, if you're old enough to go into the army, you should not be too young to run for public office. So that is the point we want to make. And I agree that there are a number of layers of discrimination. There's discrimination between men and women. And when you are a younger woman, you are doubly discriminated against. When you are from a minority, as you say, you are even more discriminated against. And so whatever policies we put in place should be able to address these different layers of discrimination. And one thing that we find very heartening, I would say, is that representation of young people is not that bad. When we compare the ratio between men and women in political life and the ratio between younger generations, men and women, we see that the younger you become, the more represented you are in that cohort. So I think this is a good sign. It shows that if we invest in young people's representation, we stand a good chance of correcting or improving on gender parity. And let me go back to what we can really do, because I want to be very practical as you asked me to. I think that it is important, first of all, to support electoral reform, to make sure that electoral processes are more youth-friendly, that they provide opportunities for young people and young girls to have access to the electoral process. It's important. We have to improve our access to the gateways to political life. I mean, political parties. They have to be educated on why it is important to invest in young people and young girls in particular. Then I have mentioned advocacy, looking at how we can promote the not too young to run campaign, looking at how we can help governments align the age of eligibility with the age of voting. It is important. So if you can vote at the age of 18, there's no reason why you should not run for office at the age of 18. Then we have supporting caucuses that federate political leaders in parliament across the political divide. This is important. These caucuses can federate around issues that are non-controversial. And I want to believe that gender equality is not controversial. I want to believe that youth empowerment is not controversial. So these are things that we need to focus on. And then we have to seize the momentum that we have that is offered by the social media today, looking at various platforms such as schools and universities, looking at other public spaces. And there we are saying that Parliament should, again, I echo your words, should not be far away from people. They should not be ivory towers. They should reach out to the younger community using these platforms that are available so that they can be informed on the real concerns of the people and see how this can be written into policy frameworks, how resources can be allocated, and how government can be held accountable for empowering young people. I do know there is an issue there, and there's this unprecedented access to information and technology that is offering opportunities to young people, but they're also posing challenges. They are gateways for promoting hate and harassment, sexism against women. And Angelica, you mentioned it before. Gender-based violence is a major obstacle to women's emancipation. We have seen that the proportion of women politicians being subject to harassment, sexism, and other forms of hate speech is rising And this is unacceptable. We need to address this, including in the parliamentary forum. So I can conclude here to say that there is outreach that has to be done by Parliament, because parliamentary processes have to be seen to be inclusive, and inclusiveness leads to legitimacy, to ownership. This promotes better implementation of the outcomes of parliamentary processes. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your remarks. And I think, conscious of time, I think we actually need to leave out some additional remarks here and just move directly to you, High Commissioner Michelle Bachelet, with your question. So over to you.
Okay, let me ask a question to our young advocates, to Ria, and ask Angelica and Luvinda then to make some brief reflections. In your point of view, what are the obstacles you have faced in engaging the UN both before and during the pandemic? And what can we do better to be more inclusive and responsive to girls' voices and circumstances? In your view, is the UN relevant to girls? And does it do enough to reflect your and other girls' rights efforts and concerns? What should we do more, and where is our voice most needed, particularly in the current context? How can the UN change its campaigns, communication, reports, messages, and voice on gender equality to better reflect, reach, and speak to girls? So, at the end, what must we do differently?
Thank you very much, High Commissioner Ms. Bachelet. I think this question really sums up kind of all the remarks that we already gave away today. As the girl said, reaching out to speak about your rights isn't just a fundamental human right. It's a necessary action for a peaceful, sustainable, and a prosperous world. Despite the gain and progress on the last decades, there are still many challenges that girls have to go through today. And as Luvinda and Angelica said, the UN it seems like it's way too far for a lot of girls. And because it's a very tangled and complex system, a lot of young girls are very afraid to hold on to big institutions because they're rarely given a platform to talk about what they want to change, what they want to add, or what they want to take away completely. Youth advocates are doing amazing things around the world, sometimes in their own skills capacities. While there are girls and young women reaching out for the stars and dreaming of open doors and opportunities, there are still a lot of doors that need keys to be opened. So these key actions that we want the UN to carry are new policies that reflect young people's voices. By offering help and giving out policies that allow young girls everywhere to speak up every day and not just on special days that mark an international movement. We can start off by creating safe helplines that are available for everyone, online and offline, and we should also focus on girls' education and make sure you give every girl a chance to feel safe going to school, but also to feel safe and comfortable at school. We want to give out the best recommendations on how to end gender-based violence and also keep all the words said accountable. When there are messages every day being spread about staying at home as much as possible for the safety of others, but also for ourselves, these messages can also do the opposite for a lot of girls. When staying at home wasn't about being safe, but it was a time for abusers to twist quarantine measures and empower themselves. So we must make sure that during the pandemic, these self-isolations measures are keeping everyone safe, whether that's at school, on the streets, or at home. Days like this, in the end, make UN relevant to girls. Days like this reflect our divisions and disagreements, as well as our hopes and convictions, because the UN would not be as useful as it is if it did not reflect the world as it is. So these recommendations can bring young voices of the world together to work together for the common objectives of our collective interests, and that, of course, is equality, peace, and justice for everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ria, for this. I think we need to have some brief reflections here from Luvinda and Angelica afterwards on those points. So Luvinda, do you want to go ahead?
Thank you very much. Well, concerning the UN, I feel it's really, really relevant for us as children because it's there for us and we must take advantage of it in order for us to attain perfection and make sure that we understand our rights as well. But I feel that just like Angelica mentioned earlier, that the UN feels very far away because we do not know about it. We as children do not know about it. So I feel if we can be given more information, and this information shouldn't be too technical, because there's some areas in the world where children do not understand anything about the UN. They have never heard about it. So if it can be more revised and simpler and be explained properly, or rather maybe change it to the local languages according to the area that it's going to, I feel we can be able to participate and we can understand more and know more about the UN itself. So I feel yes, it's relevant, but it has to also help us understand it in order for us to participate freely and highly take part in decision-making processes. Thank you.
Thank you, Luvinda. So over to you, Angelica.
Thank you. I think Luvinda and Ria, they've put it really perfectly. And just to add some more remarks to this, the UN is definitely highly relevant and has, changed a lot of our lives in terms of human rights and supporting girls and young women. But I think the UN, at the same time as being relevant, shouldn't be afraid or look down upon the ideas that we have for reform. And at the same time, I think that in terms of communications and how the UN can change, Luvinda gave a perfect example of, being able to include information about the UN in education, because that's really missing, especially for the youngest of girls. It shouldn't be up to my age for girls to be able to really be invested in engaging with the UN. And I know that if we do communicate to those who aren't as, always going for opportunities, like I know Ria, Luvinda, and I are, there are girls who are, really isolated, who are not being engaged with, that we could reach out to. And that's where the communication should be focused on, engaging them, because I know that girls and young women who are more disadvantaged do have ideas out there. They just need communication and support from the UN.
Thank you so much. So now we come to the end of our intergenerational dialogue here, and we will soon open up for question and answers. I'm not going to sum up anything. I think I would like that everybody could keep the wise words and reflection that all of you have brought to the table today, and to have that echo in your hearts and minds. I think that is more important than to sum up and put some other words in your mouth. What I would like to say is, I think one of the reasons why it was so rich, it's actually that this event has been co-designed with our young panelists. So we could see sometimes when we listen to them and we work together, not just invited to join, they've actually designed this in their way, how they were thinking that the dialogue could look like. So I really wanted to thank you for that, because I think it gives another flavor and another richness. And I think that is also why we have so many wise and good ideas coming out of it. So now we will move over to the question part. So we have had...
Sophie, sorry, I have to leave. I'm so sorry, but it has been so inspiring that I will continue working strongly to ensure gender equality and women's and girls' voices to be heard with all my other colleagues at the UN.
Okay, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you.
Great to meet you, girls.
Yeah, bye. Thank you so much. Thanks. Yes, so we have received a few questions, and I would like to share, I think I will share two questions, and then whoever wants to pick up, just give us a sign. The first question, these are coming from our participants. The first question reads like this: exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic, we are seeing more of our lives go online. However, girls and young women face distinct challenges in accessing the internet and participating in online debate safely. How can we ensure digital spaces remain open, safe, and accessible to girls and young women around the world, including participating in the international system? Second question: it is great to hear leaders talk about engaging youth effectively. I'm just wondering, who holds governments and organizations accountable for this? And are there resources available for governments and regional bodies that outline how to engage youth in a meaningful way? Do we have any panelists who would like to step in? I see one hand is Monica, and do we have another hand also?
Martin.
So, okay, I couldn't see it. Okay, perfect.
Martin.
Okay, Martin. Thank you. So we will start with you, and maybe one of the youth would also like to come in afterwards. We start with you, Monica. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Anne-Sophie. Just a quick, a couple of quick examples, especially to your last question, but it also connects with the first question. One of the things that we are seeing, and the reflection that Martin just did on political participation, it really resonates very, very deeply with me and UNFPA, not only because I was a parliamentarian, but because UNFPA works a lot with parliamentarians. And in what the High Commissioner Bachelet was saying on designing the table. It's not only sitting young people at the table, it's co-designing the table. And what we've been doing is in national and subnational levels, UNFPA, I mean, is that we are not only getting the information and services that young people need, but we are also bringing them to the design of the services through youth-led and youth-serving organizations. I'm going to give you one example. In Mozambique, we work with an organization called Coligação. It's an organization created and led by young people, and we've developed a program called Rapariga Biz. And the goal of the program is to track and to empower 1 million girls to know their rights, access the right to support, and keep themselves safe. Or the work we do with the Y peers at the regional level, where we train some young people, and then the training to the other young people is done by their peers. So there's a lot of good examples coming, especially from the field, that then come up to the decision-making process, so that it's not a top-bottom approach, not even a bottom-up approach. It's a co-designed, co-created approach. And I think that if we listen to the youth-led organizations, and if we listen to the good examples, I think that we will find that there's a plethora of things that we could do, that we should be doing, and that could really change the narrative and change the dialogue. We tried to do that in Nairobi last year when we had our summit to celebrate 25 years of the International Conference on Population and Development. And it was the biggest youth participation ever in a conference like this. And we are really keen also to bring that momentum to the Beijing 25 celebrations on women's rights. And of course, that we always count on Plan International and the other partners who are sitting at the table here to echo this voice and to stand by your side in doing that.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much for that. Over to you, Martin.
Thank you very much, Anne-Sophie. Very quickly, Monica, you just mentioned the UNFPA summit last year in Nairobi. We're happy that accountability mechanisms are being put in place, and I'm pleased to I am a member of the high-level commission that would make sure that the Nairobi commitments are implemented. So that's one form of accountability that somebody was asking about, how we hold international organizations accountable. There are internal mechanisms. I said, for example, in the IPU, we have internal governance structures that make sure that we are walking the talk. For instance, we have a gender partnership group that monitors women's participation in the various deliberations of the IPU. And if member states are found to be falling foul of the requirement to be gender equal, they are sanctioned through losing part of their voting rights in the IPU. And that is what we're doing with the young people. The young people, we're providing incentives. If you bring younger parliamentarians to the IPU, you are entitled to more speaking rights. So these are things that we're doing to promote accountability from within, that is holding ourselves accountable. But also there is external accountability. And every international organization is accountable to its members. Its members are entitled to know what they're doing in order to implement policies that have been agreed upon. So our member parliaments are entitled to know what we are doing with the resources that are made available to us. Then who holds governments accountable? It is parliaments. Parliaments have that constitutional role to oversee government action, to make sure that government is implementing what it has committed to implement. It is doing that effectively and efficiently for the good of the entire society. So it is important to lay emphasis on parliaments building their capacity, and that's what we're doing at the IPU, to hold governments accountable for child rights, for the rights of women, young people, and youth in general. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your answers here on this. I was wondering, do we have one of our young delegates? Yes, I see Angelica's, your hand is up. I will give the floor to you just for a brief comments there and answer before we coming to the closure of this event. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. I think I just wanted to respond mainly to that question about how we can ensure that digital spaces remain open, safe, and accessible. To give some context, in Australia, there was a report recently done actually by Plan International that saw that 65% of Australian girls reported being abused online. And I know the COVID-19 pandemic has really added to that increase in number. And globally, that's 58% as well, is the average. And those are quite scary numbers. And the reality is that I think we are now in a stage where I think it's important for, I guess, organizations such as the UN and other world leaders come together to not only keep our governments accountable about how we're keeping girls safe online, but also companies that are in control of these spaces that we do engage in, that we do use for our activism and for our community work. Those are the social media companies and other online platforms as well. There needs to be a lot of co-creation happening with our voices in there too, that can shed light to the lived experiences and realities that we have about our experiences online, because we want to be able to engage more in that digital advocacy. And technology is a vital tool to being able to reach to those who are much more disadvantaged than others within girls and young women. But we can't do that if the platforms are not safe and are not redesigned to make sure that we are able to engage and be free from discrimination and any sort of political violence that may deter us from wanting to speak out even more. So I just, if we focus on that as a way forward, I think we can definitely come a long way to supporting girls and young women more online.
Thank you so much for those words, Angelica. I think now we come to the end of our session. We have 2 minutes left, so it's short to make a full, a conclusion of this very rich dialogue. What is clear is that what we heard from Ray, Angelica, and Lubina have shared, what you have shared with us, is actually what we hear from many girls and young women around the world. And it's very clear, the message. They don't want only to be listened. They want to co-create, they want to speak, they want to shape the table, they want to be part of it, and they want to be active. So really, it's about changing our way of working, and they need to exercise their rights. So I think for us working at the international level, we really need to have some serious thinking. How are we going to change our way of working? How can we institutionalize ways to really create and shape spaces for children and young people? How can we really hold governments to account if they are not listening to children and taking their voices into account? It's a lot of work going forward. I think this dialogue has been extremely rich, and I'm very thankful for all of you who are participating, all preparation. Some of you have got up really very early. For some of you, it's very, very late. It's a lot of engagement. Everybody working in English here. I mean, thank you from the whole of my heart. I really want to thank all of you. I also would like to thank our leaders who have taken the time to be part of this. I hear also your commitment for this, and I really hope this is not the end, but it's actually the beginning of really finding ways how we can place children's rights, girls' rights, and young women's rights in the forefront, and see that they are part of shaping our world and not coming and laying behind or anyway, that we really need to take down all those barriers. So with this, I would like to send you back to your activities and wish you a wonderful International Day of the Girl. Thank you for being with us, and thank you for really wanting to change your life and the reality for girls so that they can live up to their full potential. I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Thanks. Bye-bye.